So if you ask most dog owners whether or not their dogs can read their minds, whether or not their pets can read their mind, few answers. No one will actually ever answer no. But they really can't tell you why. And today we're going to explore the significant reasons on exactly why. One is their senses are special when it comes compared to us. Their eyes are different, their ears are different, their ability to nose and smell things are different, and their sensory capacities is different. Their environment significantly different than you and I have an ability to interpret our environment. The theory of the mind sounds really pretty ethereal, and it's a psychology expression that is related to understanding in the human environment, and there are significant numbers of researchers that believe that it applies to dogs and cats. The theory of the mind is defined by dictionary.com as the ability to interpret one's own and other people's mental and emotional states, understanding that each person has unique motives and perspectives. A couple interesting, really key words in this. Interpret, I think, is the key word, because dogs, you're going to find, are dealing with a significantly different data set than you and I are. And that data set gives them a significantly different advantage on how they interpret their environment. The interpreting environment and related to just finite objects around them, interpreting their environment when they encounter another dog, nose to nose, face to face, and interpreting their environment when it comes to paying attention to you, pleasing you, doing mischievous things around the house, and the like. The theory of the mind was actually developed with experiments on chimpanzees and children, on experiments on chimpanzees and on children. And it implies that the individual, person, and or dog has an understanding of what's happening in the environment and an understanding on relationship to motives and perspectives. Those aren't my terms, but we're going to use them because it's in the dictionary of what's happening and what's going to be observed that you and I can see with our dogs. And what I hope to be able to communicate with you through all this whole process is that you can look at and experience and understand what's happening more accurately. I think I like that word, more accurately. And when you understand what's happening as you're communicating with your dogs and your cats and your pets, if you understand it more accurately, I think we can develop a significantly better and deeper relationship with them. And that's what it's all about, is to continue having a super relationship with our pets that not only will benefit them, but in the long run, both ends of the leash absolutely have to be in harmony for all of this to be acceptable to you and to your pup. So what does all of that mean? In the first place, eyes. We're going to look at the senses in general, and then we're going to pull this whole thing together. Dogs' eyes are different, and for ages, people have been saying dogs are colorblind. Dogs can't see color. And for ages, I've been saying, that's wrong, that's wrong. Dogs can see colors. Cats can see colors. My cat decorated my apartment 50 years ago when I was a bachelor. So I know dogs and cats can see color. What we now know, there's two sensors in the brain, in the back of the retina, right? Rods and cones are the receptors in the back of the retina that pick up the light, pick up the images, send them to the brain, and the brain processes them, right? Well, the difference between dogs and cats is that rods, cones. Dogs have two flavors of cones. People have three. People have trichromic reception. Dogs have dichromic reception. It's kind of a little bit like someone that's red-green colorblind. Take home is that dogs don't interpret the color red and orange well, and it can be kind of lost in the background. So when you go to the market and you find bright red toys, I would throw it back on the shelf. You need something other than bright red or bright orange. Those are made for you. They're not made by any company that has any sense about what the dog is going to like. That's free for listening here today. No red toys. So the second thing is dogs have the ability to process that in a spectrum that's faster than people. And so their distance vision is significantly better than your distant vision. And that, I think, is a take-home. They can process and see motion better and more clearly than you. Not so much still objects, but So when you point to something, or you, like in your training, you have hand signals, they can see those hand signals significantly more accurately than you think. And so you can take advantage of that by exaggerating a hand signal. And the second area is hearing. Dogs have a hearing capacity up to about 50,000 hertz. I think people are somewhere, well, 10,000 hertz is where a dog whistle's at. So, and dog whistles are in general invisible to your ears and mine. So their ability to hear sounds and sound ranges are astronomically bigger than yours and mine. So if the room's quiet and Fido picks up his head and he's interested, he's worried about something that's real and not imaginary. Thunder and lightning can make sounds distance away that he can hear the different variations of and you can't. Automobiles can make their own special type sounds. My dog knows when on the property. We used to go to dog shows, and the conjure, when he was showing, would go with the handler ahead of time, and he would know when my old rickety truck got on the showgrounds blocks away from where he was parked on the campus of the show. He could hear my vehicle long miles away without anybody telling him that it was me. I thought that was really kind of unbelievable. With hearing, there are discernible variations in both breeds and individuals. 3 Bernese Mountain Dogs, which are sitting at my feet from time to time, one of them is going to have better hearing than the others. And certain breeds are well documented at having better hearing than others. Labradors are the top of the list. Miniature pinschers and schnauzers down towards the bottom. What does that mean? Not a whole lot, but if your dog doesn't hear that well, maybe you need to think about giving him remedial lessons. So that was just a joke. So a lot of times, if you get into a contest with your friends, my dog hears better than your dog, and he's got a Labrador and you don't, I would probably change subjects. 6-8-30. 6-8-30. Anybody want to guess what anatomically those 3 numbers mean? The ear, the canine ear, auditory center, the eardrum is, where are we here? The eardrum is down here. Oh gosh, I'm backwards. The eardrum, I have to do this by the Braille method. The eardrum is down here. The balance center is up here. The cochlea with hearing occurs in here with tiny little hairs that are the receptors. And the ear works with tiny little muscles that pull on the eardrum and interpret the eardrum and the sensations on the eardrum with the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. Remember the malleus, incus, and staples? The 6 refers to the number of muscles in the human ear. We have 6 muscles that respond to the tympanic membrane sensation and transmit that information. The canine has 18, roughly 3 times you and I. Guess what? The feline, the cat, has 30 muscles that interpret that, almost twice that of the dog, 6 times more powerful than you and I. So amazingly enough, when you tiptoe across the room and you open the refrigerator 2 doors away, yes, the cat can hear you open it up and come flying across the room and try to get their Friskies treats. So don't be surprised when you think they're reading your mind. They're not reading your mind. They're listening to the refrigerator door, and they've got that tuned. So the mechanisms of the 6th sense are seeing differently and in some respects more accurately, hearing significantly more sounds. They're going to use their eyes to pick up body language. They're going to use their ears to interpret voice tones and sounds. They're going to assimilate habits of what you do on a various basis, which you have totally forgotten what you're going to do. And there are various pheromones that are in the environment. Pheromones are smells from chemicals that your body or your cat's body or your dog's body or your horse's or your parrot's body produces. And they're produced specifically under certain circumstances, and the pheromones can be detected by the cat and or the dog's nose. The detection process is really, really, really interesting because in experiments they've determined that dogs can detect lying or trickery. Dogs can detect meanness or uncomfortableness. If you take a person and he tries to open a jar or a can or something, and he's got somebody standing next to him, and you got the subject dog watching this whole process, and the subject next to him is very neutral and is just kind of standing there as an observer, that's one episode. if the person next to him is generally helpful and helps him open the bottle or the jar, whatever it is, and those two people go to give the dog a treat, the dog, believe it or not, differentiates between the mean person that wasn't helping the person and the person that was helpful, and is much more likely to take the treat from the person that was helpful than from the mean person that wasn't helping him. The second type of experiment that they would do is that they would take a dog bowl and they would put the dog bowl down on the floor with food in it, and the behaviors would point to the dog bowl, and the dog would come over and get the treat. And the dog couldn't get any treats from the dog bowl, and you would point to that. And then you would go back to the original dog bowl that had the treat in it, and the behaviors would point to that treat, and the dog would kind of look at him and generally wouldn't go back to the treat, even though he didn't get a treat from it now. So what he was suspicious of the behavior of the pointing that was once treat-oriented, trickery, and the like. So they can just differentiate between trickery and consistency. I find that absolutely astronomical. Smell. So we want to talk about smell. Dogs can remember scents forever. They have a memory bank filed away for different scents and smells. They can remember your scent and your smell and they associate it in the following ways. They associate the smell or the scent with that association. They'll behave appropriately. If they were unhappy with that association, they won't react or smell or behave in a happy type fashion. If you go away or the dog moves and comes back or something like that, they are going to remember their owners no matter what, and that's all done from scent, and that scent memory bank is forever. It's been estimated that the canine scent and nose is roughly 10,000 to 100,000 times more sensitive than your nose. I find that I'm going to say yes, I acutely believe that it's astronomically bigger, but how you can measure 10,000 versus 100,000, I have absolutely no idea. But I just respect all these people that are trying to. Help us with this data and understanding our wonderful canine companions. So what we touched upon that is that the scent is associated with feelings in the memory bank, and it's a very similar place in the brain that you and I file perfume type smells or odors that are pleasant and that we associate with loved ones or family members. Smiling. Facial expressions are very much important to dogs, and that facial expression you can use to your advantage in communicating with your dogs in a positive manner. When you're smiling, you're rewarding them, and if you're frowning and grumpy, you can communicate to him that maybe Fido didn't do something that he was supposed to do. Most importantly, the kind of a spoiler alert of what we're going to get into in a second, but this is very appropriate right now. If dogs respond to and record and behave appropriately to consistency. What I mean by that is if your voice tone and your facial posture and your smiling all say thumbs up, good boy, but you're smiling at them, that's going to be a mixed motion and they're not going to respond appropriately. I think a really interesting example that I get consistently over time is that clients will ask me, they've got a dog or a cat, and they've got a new partner that they're trying to integrate into their lives. And that individual is not liked by the dog or the cat. And they say, Dr. B, you've got to help me get them to like Fred or Sally or whoever it is that's when they want to integrate into their life. And there's some things that you can do and the like. But I often wonder if they're not communicating some type of negative signal about that person. Maybe they're not 100% comfortable with the relationship. Maybe they're nervous about something else, or maybe that person is giving off some vibrations that are not consistent with his happy voice. His body posture might be inconsistent. He might be sitting there kind of grumpy. He might think, I really want to like this new person, but I really don't like the dog, and the dog's and I don't really want to get along with him, but I'll pretend like I'm getting along with him. That's possibly the big problem, and that's something that one should easily and importantly try to look at. The data point, the longer you're gone, you probably can figure this out, the more excited Fido is going to be when you come home. And long absences create a level of less in your dog. Compare the death of one of his significant people in the family, dogs will mourn. And if that happens, you need to be able to, you can't substitute for that, but you need to support that loss with certain behavioral tricks that would incorporate that support, such as more time. Don't shower treats on them. They won't accept that. They won't correlate that. But more time and more energy will help them find and be able to take their place. Facial expressions we talked about. We don't have to go back over there. The nose and the canine, sensory-wise, is very, very important. But did you know that the right nostril and the left nostril work independently from the standpoint of basically twofold? One, their nose sensations, they can process things differently from the right side and the left side and get more information and localize left and right. The second thing is that when they are expressing their own facial expressions, both eye facial expressions, lip facial expressions. But in addition, the way they twitch their nose can be independent, and that's part of their personal expression, particularly when they're approaching other dogs. And that's going to be one of your homework assignments, is to look at your dog when they greet other dogs and to see exactly what they're doing for their face, for their nose and their eyes, whether their body's stiff, whether their body's relaxed, and the like. And you'll be able to get great insight into what's happening with your dog. And if you can simultaneously watch what's happening with the other dog, you can get very instant, significant clues so that you can tell way ahead of time whether or not you might have a problem. And that could be the difference between an emergency visit and sitting at home drinking coffee and watching Dr. B on YouTube. So they talk about dogs being able to smell fear. I think that's 100% true, but I think fear is communicated potentially in more than just smell. We talked about the fact that dogs +1 +2 +3, sight, what they're seeing, which will incorporate the subject's body posture, facial expression, like sight, what they're seeing, what they're hearing, and what they're smelling all at the same time. We know that individuals, when they're afraid, will emit certain pheromones, both through their sweat glands, to the body, generally to the pores, and those pheromones are going to be picked up by Fido very acutely and from significantly far distances, and that is part of the whole mechanism where dogs truly can sense fear. Fear is going to create adrenaline release, and that adrenaline release can create pheromone type activities which the dogs can smell. If you're uncomfortable with someone, Fido is going to be able to figure that out. And if you're walking down the street and you're uncomfortable, you can help Fido transmit that if you need to. A lot of experiments on whether dogs can anticipate nasty events. The conclusion is yes, but I want to talk more specifically about bites, because in my profession you end up with fights and bites and people getting bit and a whole bunch of things. Data point number 1, calm, not anxious people in the presence of an aggressive dog. We're not talking about the world's most happy dog that's never bitten anyone and probably never will bite anyone. But in the presence of a potentially aggressive dog, if the individual is calm and not anxious and very neutral, the possibility of getting bit is less than 1/3. An individual that's nervous or anxious and acting inappropriately, the likelihood of getting bit is over 2/3. So beware of that when you're interacting with other dogs. And the other interesting thing about bites is that individuals that are bitten by a dog have like a 3-fold risk of being bit a second or a third or an additional time. And so that kind of dovetails with the statistics that it's more likely that but radiating some type of, either through body posture, through facial expressions, through pheromones and body and sweating and perspiration, that type of activity, or probably more likely some combination thereof, where they're going to encounter. We had an individual that worked for us, for my wife, for 18 years, and she had been bitten as a child. What is that going to do? Memories, anxiety whenever they see another dog, and what's that going to do? It's going to increase her risk probably into that greater than 66% category. And she was working in a house with a flock of Bernese Mountain Dogs. And she never really was 100% comfortable with 100% of the dogs. And she tried to put on a good face and the like, but there was a couple dogs that she never really wanted to be that involved with. And we certainly respected that, and I could see that. But that intrinsic fear of that one bite as a child lasted forever. And I think that's a really important data point for us as caretakers of our dogs, is to make sure that no one ever gets bit, number one. And caretakers of our families, is that children at an early age need to be educated on how to meet and greet or stay away from, until they're old enough, meet and greet appropriately, and to have a positive experience continually. And to teach them to be afraid is not in anybody's best interest. I can remember I used to train at an outdoor shopping center, what I still do, and I was there one day and I had one of the dogs. I was working with him, and I was having a lot of fun, and she was doing good. And when you're working in a situation like that, you size up the environment around you, and you normally are just ignoring people, and you pretty much try not to engage in a lot of people, and just using the general commotion as a distraction to get the dog to focus on you and a few other things. And I saw this woman coming down the street with a kid that was about 2.5 feet tall, and she spotted us, and she picked the child up and raised it up overhead and ran past. And I started, if it wasn't so pathetic, I would have burst out laughing. But I wondered, what is that child learning about being around dogs? He's going to spend his entire life being scared to death of dogs. As soon as he sees a dog, when he's without his mother, his anxiety is going to go up, his body posture is going to change, his fear mode is going to change, he's going to go running by, and all of that's going to act like, I think a dog's going to chase him and bite him for sure. I think that's really, really sad. But that's my humble opinion. I worry about little things like that. So, dogs read body language from other dogs. So your homework is to watch two dogs greet. Dogs that have seen each other are going to greet each other completely differently than two dogs that have never seen each other. Watch for body posture while they're stiff. I'm not talking about just their tail. Everybody talks about their tail whatsoever. The tail is important, but there's a lot of dogs without tails. There's Rottweilers and Bulldogs and the like that don't have any tails, but they're going to tell you exactly what's going on by how stiff or relaxed their body posture are, whether they go into any type of play mode. But watch their facial expressions, watch their lip expressions, watch their nose, watch their ears. You're going to get a whole new education. Shouldn't say minor, but earthquake and weather changes. Dogs can definitely be known to predict or alert people to earthquakes and weather changes. How is that possible? Well, most earthquakes, I shouldn't say most earthquakes, but I think if you look at seismographic evidence that the big quake is preceded by little tremors. Dogs can sense those tremors to their feet and the like. Weather changes, thunderstorms, lightning produces, for sure, the electrical charges could create substances like ozone. The ozone, if you've got a $100,000, 100,000-fold increase in the ability to smell a thunderstorm, the wind's blowing, you're downwind, the dog's going to know there's a storm coming for sure. What he does, how he responds, whatsoever, is another thing, but he knows that it's coming. The one thing that I've noticed with storms coming, and particularly where we live, we get winds that are not necessarily associated with rain and thunder and lightning. They're just winds, and they come generally from the east. And the dogs are always go on alert when those winds are occurring. And what's happening is the winds are bringing smells they've never smelled before, and they're bringing sounds that they've never heard before, and they're trying to process all of that. So, in sum and substance, dogs use their senses significantly differently. That's true. The take home is that they have zillions, I love that expression, they're collecting zillions of more pieces of data than you and I can imagine. Their eyes are bringing in motion data and the like. Their ears are bringing in astronomically more information than you and I can imagine. Their nose is bringing in and recording all of these smells. They're getting vibrations from the sound, and they're processing, if they're talking about people and the like, or other dogs, their body posture. And their brain is, I'm not going to say their brain is smarter than your brain, because you can multiply 2 times 2 and get whatever. You can go to an Einstein class and learn about the theory of relativity and talk about all kinds of ethereal things. But the dog can process these data points significantly better, and they have more data to deal with. So yes, they can read our minds.